Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFerio. I'm your host for the show. Thank you for being here. Of course, you can subscribe to the show anywhere you get podcasts. We are partial to YouTube, where you might be watching me right now in the world headquarters, aka the back office in Kentucky of Keys to the Shop. Of course, today we're sponsored by our friends at Arto Brick at arto.com or at Arto Brick on Instagram. We're also sponsored by our friends at the Barista series from Pacific Foods. And so I'm going to talk more about those folks later in the episode. And by the way, Keys to the Shop Consulting, we always mention that's available to you if you're interested in working one-on-one with me, Chris at keystotheshop.com. So America's Best Coffee House. Back in the year 2012, I think, from 2012 to about 2014, 2015, myself and a Coffee Fest came up with an idea for a competition that was a real world-based competition. And in the early conversations around this competition was also our friend Josh Boyd, who works for Middleby Coffee Solutions today. And back in the day was the owner of Metronome Coffee, past guest on the show, very good friend. And this idea was meant to create a competition that really encapsulated what it's like to work in a real coffee shop. And so Coffee Fest at that time was all on board. They said, let's do this. I'd been working with Coffee Fest in the world of latte art for quite a while and doing lecturing. And I took it to the then president and head of Coffee Fest, David Heilbrunn. We kind of put this together. And it was this real just labor of love. When I put together the rules, the regulations, the score sheets, and the format, and how different aspects of the competition would be weighted, I mean, really, the whole goal was, is this a accurate simulation of or rewarder of a coffee house? The way that it worked was we sent out the application, like sent out the call, send in your applications. So applications were sent out, or at least people would send their applications in rather. And this application, we took it and said, okay, we're going to, based on these essay questions, and I think I'm remembering all this correctly because it was a bit ago. A lot of life has happened since then. Based on these essay questions, we would select people, kind of the way you would do with hiring a barista. You know, you say, wow, this cafe looks really promising. There are some answers to these questions and different aspects of this cafe that shine through. We'll select these cafes. And then what we did was we sent out secret shoppers to these coffee shops. And these coffee shops have a secret shopper go, and there was a very thorough inspection that was done on the cafe, very much incognito. And the top performers were the ones that we invited to join us at Coffee Fest. In each Coffee Fest, we had a America's Best Coffee House competition. And those people that were invited, they had to have a team of 3 people that had been on the staff for 90 days at minimum, that were working in the coffee house. And they were invited to be a team that participated in this competition on the show floor of Coffee Fest. And the format was pretty cool. We had an entire coffee shop that was built, designed to be completely functional along, a working sink, front bar, back bar, refrigeration, menu, register. There was a pour over bar. It was a full coffee shop. It was able to be broken down and shipped in 4 crates around the country. And myself and my friend Jesse Harriet and others were participants in, the production of this, especially my friend Jesse, who's like the stage manager of this stuff. The way it worked was this group of 3 people were supposed to come up with some signatured beverages and a pour over menu that they brought with them. They can bring their own coffee. And they also had a set menu that we provided for them that they had to make. I believe we gave them a 10-minute opening shift, and we had a whole judges sheet for that. There was 3 of us judges that watched and took notes on this opening shift. And then we would open the cafe to attendees on the show floor. and actually take real customers ordering on a real register. Those receipts were printed. The customers could grade their experience, and their judgments were weighted in the balance of the judges' judgments. Some of those attendees were tapped by the judges to be secret shoppers themselves, who delivered their beverages to us to be judged on our sheets. So you never know when you're serving a judge. They ran this bar for 30 minutes together. And then they had a closing shift, which was a 10-minute closing shift. So the better part of a full hour of operation of a cafe on the show floor with their own unique takes on the pour overs and signature beverages, along with a set menu and real customers. And it was awesome. It really was maybe one of the most unique ways to examine the cross section of different styles of communication, teamwork, preparation methods, cleanliness, all the stuff you can imagine happens when you're under pressure and you're serving a line of people. And we got to debrief with a lot of teams afterwards and show them our score sheets. And they were pretty thorough score sheets. And those debriefing sessions were very helpful because, it's not just about here's how you can be a better competitor in this competition, because this competition was designed to reflect the real world of a coffee shop and functionally did run as a real coffee shop. We were able to judge this team, this little slice of a coffee shop in real time, and they could take that back to their bar and become better in the real work of the cafe. I've participated in US Barista Championships. I got fourth place in the US in 2007, like ancient history, like far ancient history. But the debriefing sessions were, very specific to the rules and regulations of the competition itself. And yeah, there are a lot of things that you could do to take what you learned there and apply it to your cafe. But because these people were actually collectively staff members of that coffee shop, that working coffee shop, again, that were invited here after already receiving a bunch of, scrutiny, that made it a lot more likely that participation in that competition and getting that kind of feedback from that participation would bring positive change to that coffee shop and to those people, because they can make a 1-for-1. We learned this here, we apply it to the coffee shop. There's no real translation that needs to be done. So this competition ran 3 times a year, and we had a competition where the top finishers from the years were invited together. I forget what city we did this in. I remember Palace Coffee in Texas was ultimately the winner of the competition, and it was pretty awesome. So there is a lot there. I just wanted to set the stage for you and give you the idea of what America's Best Coffee House was about. I didn't pick the name, by the way. So I might have had a less aggressive name. I don't know if that was a good thing or bad thing, but the whole idea, of course, is what can we do to figure out how to showcase the real coffee shop in a competition format. So I bring all this up just to say, if there's going to be a competition out there, I would love it to be something focused on real world skills so that we can make a difference where it really counts. And that's the coffee shop. What we're all about here at Keys to the Shop. But there are a few things that I learned by watching these teams that I want to pass on to you. Now, the first thing that you have to think about that I learned from watching these teams is real world versus a stage. Even with all of the pains we took to make this as real as possible, it still is not real. And the stage creates its own sort of atmosphere, its own sort of gravity. But at the same time, the real world aspects of this and what we allowed to happen to them on the floor that would happen in a normal cafe, for some people was really unexpected. It shook them when a customer came back and was trying to chat with them across the espresso machine. Because in a competition, you're in control of the entire stage. It's your world. You go into the basement of the roastery and you just meticulously craft every 90-degree angle, everything that needs to be dusted and all this stuff. But that's not the bar we work in. And that's why we allowed people to do this. We didn't say, hey, don't bother the competitors. These are customers. Now, short of jumping in behind the bar, that would have been a bridge too far. I remember specifically these people, this group, I forget, and I wouldn't even tell you what coffee shop it was for the sake of anonymity, but I remember a customer was doing this. They were talking with them across the machine, and they were getting very upset at this person. And they even told them, "Hey, we're in a competition. I'm sorry, we can't talk." That went on the score sheet. It went into the hospitality category of the score sheet because this is supposed to be America's best coffee house, right? America's best coffee shop. Your cafe has people in it. And if you're not able to gracefully receive some kind of the pressure of socialization or the real world, because your mind is, this is a competition, I shouldn't have to deal with this, that is a disqualifier in some ways. So the real world versus the stage is, hey, on a stage, you have an incredible level of control. But if you set up the stage, and this was something that we talked about when it comes to training your staff, and it's an aspect of training that you need to do. We train how we work and we work how we train. That's what you need to think about. In this competition, we allowed as much of the real world scenarios to be part of the 30 minutes of bar run time as possible, because it's a pressure test. And some people didn't really handle it well because they had more of a, I need to be the curator of my space, right? Now, in the real world, if you tried to do that, you don't get that customer back. They feel pretty offended. They didn't really do anything wrong. There's no sign that says, please don't, talk to the baristas. It's like they're behind glass at a zoo or something. In this competition, though, some people handled it really well. And the best people handled it in a way that was positive when they were confident in their abilities behind the machine. When things started to get out of control behind the bar, when the POS, the person working the register, was not being a team player in helping others set up drinks, being gracious, throttling the line a little bit, and they were just like burying the espresso machine with ticket after ticket after ticket. And I can't say anything. Everything in me sometimes wanted to be like, hey, help your coworkers. What are you doing? You're just having this big smile on your face and you're having a good time with the customers. But over here on the other side, we see people just dying. They're buried, and customers are not happy over here on this side. And these are customers who signed up to be here in this competition, by the way, not ahead of time. They just kind of wandered in, and we let them, and we said, hey, this is what we're doing. Line up and get coffee. And, it's free. By the way, that's a huge privilege for a lot of people because they got some super interesting signature drinks and lattes and cappuccinos for free from world-class coffee shops. It was not wasted. Those drinks were drunk. And so I think that's another aspect of the competition. Maybe we were ahead of the curve when it comes to sustainability of competitions, except for shipping a coffee shop. But anyway, the point is that the people who handled the customer interactions gracefully are the ones who had the margin to be graceful, because they had the skills behind the bar to stay in control of the orders and not feel upset or interrupted to the degree that everything is just going to fall apart. That's a great skill to have when you're working in a coffee shop, right? So, we talk about the real world training. When you're training your baristas, train them this way. Train them to be expecting to have interruptions in their world. There's a competition called the Bocuse d'Or. It's like the world's most like prestigious shishi chef competition. Like very manicured food, highly Michelin adjacent or directly Michelin style stuff. And the Bocuse d'Or, I think it takes place in Lyon, France. It's like the Olympics. But in the stands, they have rowdy very rowdy observers. And so the teams of these various countries that come to compete, when they compete in their kitchens, or they train in their kitchens rather, they play very loud, chaotic music, disrupting music, unsettling music, and noises, so that they can train their minds to focus in on what they're doing in spite of those things. Now, if you didn't train that way and you didn't train for the real world, what you're going to end up doing is the real world it's going to throw you off. So I'm going to jump off of that point here because I think we've kind of gone over it enough. But that's one of the things we learned about when we ran America's Best Coffee House competition. And then the other part is something that I mentioned already, which is you never know who's judging. Now, when you start to see drinks come out that aren't that great, and you know who the customer is who's been tapped to bring, actually, I never knew which customer it was that was going to bring my drink too, because that was another layer of, you got to make it very unbiased. So I never knew who it was going to be, who was going to deliver that drink, but we did get that drink delivered. We kind of left that to the stage manager. I think Jesse was the one who ended up selecting them, and it was a kind of an at random selection. But we would get that cappuccino. But if that judge, that person who was going in to deliver our drinks to us, that was secretly delivering it to the judges, if they got the cappuccino at a time when people were really struggling with their shots and they were struggling with their milk, that's what the judges judge you on. That's what me and Pete Licata was one of our judges. Terry Zinowich was one of our judges, and Ryan Soder. There was a lot of scrutiny on these things. And unfortunately, sometimes we were delivered drinks because the competitors just didn't know, or they couldn't have done better because they were just so buried, that are just like, ooh, that's rough. It's very tepid. It's not very hot because we're trying to be very fast for some reason. And they weren't awarded, points necessarily based on how many people they got through the line. They could get a lot of people, but the customers score weighted a little bit, not so much that it would actually win the competition for anybody, but enough that it was something to pursue. But there's a diminishing return when you're thinking, okay, we need to get all of these customer scores up by getting more people through, so they'll get more points for our team. After a certain point of going so fast, you lose your ability to control quality, and then the judges get your drink, and then all of a sudden, the judges whose score is weighted more heavily than those customers is based on an actual customer experience, but weighted more heavily, right? And so we ended up with cappuccinos and espressos and sometimes signature beverages that were just kind of, they weren't as good as some of the other ones we saw come up. I saw some really great cappuccinos when you first start. Yep, it's really good. We're rocking and rolling. Okay, we got quality control. Hey, we're doing it. 15 minutes hits, time's going to come to get you. And that's the next point here. Besides, the fact that you never know who's judging in your cafe. It could be somebody who's going to either write a really good review about your cafe, but ends up writing a bad one, or it could be a critic, for a food magazine. Who knows who it is? But lots of opportunities are squandered or taken advantage of, even for things like wholesale accounts, based on positive experiences in the cafe. And every customer has to be treated like they're a judge. Hey everyone, it's Chris. I wanted to take a second to thank our sponsors today, starting with Arto Brick on Instagram. That is at Arto Brick. Tiles, hand-painted, handmade, literally from stones that are ground and formed and rendered in Los Angeles by this wonderful team into tiles, hard surfaces, and stonework for your cafe. They can make whatever wild idea you've got, for art and design, for stonework and tiles. They can make that. And you should reach out to Armin, who runs it with his brother Vod. Reach out to Armin over on Instagram at Arto Brick and let them help you make your coffee shop really stand out with just artisan stonework and tiles that are super unique. Really great people. Again, Arto Brick. Now, our other sponsor today is the Pacific Barista Series. They have been the standard for plant-based beverages for decades, and they have been a staunch supporter of coffee shops and baristas ever since the beginning. So their extensive lineup of plant-based performance beverages stands up to the heat from steaming, produces great texture, keeps the flavor balance focused on coffee. You should go to pacificfoodservice.com, get samples, and try it for yourself. And if you want the best plant-based beverages for your customers, you really should be trying the Barista series from Pacific. Time will find you out. When you start, everything looks good. But the proof of how good we actually are is how good we can be when we're tired, when we're flustered. And then if we don't have a plan, it just kind of falls apart. If you don't plan for how your systems are going to help you stay engaged in the process when you feel the weakest, then you're going to crumble when the rush hits. The competition like Crush the Rush was one of these like reality-based competitions. That's why I loved it so much. Also, the Barista League. We just had Steve from the Barista League on the show. And in our competition at America's Best Coffee House, it was a similar thing in that after a certain amount of time, you're just like, okay, I can't keep up the pretense anymore. We're going to fall to the level of our systems, or we're just going to fall, right? And that's what I saw a lot of times at the 15-minute mark during this competition. A lot of teams either stayed the same or even got better, or they completely fell apart. I saw the wildest cleaning standards I've ever seen in my life. Towels literally dripping in milk, being wiping counters for no reason at all, just to do something because we didn't know what else to do. We were just wiping things. They didn't even need to be wiped, but we didn't have a plan for, hey, if you're not doing anything, help me get this drink done. But instead, they would just kind of pivot, not know what to do, start wiping things, make it dirtier. We saw some people like every time they rinsed a pitcher, they would flick the pitcher to get the liquid out, but they would flick it so that it sprayed the back bar. So the back fridge was just covered with milk. And they didn't even realize they were doing it. But that's not something that you would train someone to do, but it's a habit developed somehow on the bar. So I have to imagine this is a thing that got brought from the cafe to the stage. And those habits come to light. So you could have trained differently for this competition, but at 15 minutes, you're too tired to keep pretending this is the way you actually work. Now, from minute 15 to minute 30, that's actually who we are. So I always kind of held my breath to say, hey, they're doing really good here, but let's see how things go before we fill out the score sheet. And again, we had 3 judges always like watching, seeing what's happening. That's a lot of pressure, especially when you got Pete Licata judging. You got to fear the beard. And it was, again, time, tiredness, who you really are when the chips are down comes out. And it's the proof of either a good training, good habits, or not. So that's another thing that we learned. And I think one of the other things that we learned about this teamwork thing, like what a really good coffee shop does from America's Best Coffee House, was you got to have a plan, but you also have to be flexible. And yes, I just said you have to have this plan. You have to have a system. What do we do when this happens or that happens? But the flexibility is all about how our disposition as a part of a team is to be aware of how I can help in the moment. It might have not been in the plan, but I'm not the kind of person on the bar who says, well, my role description and my job description didn't technically say that I was supposed to go and do this, but I see something needing to be done and I'm going to help, or I'm going to ask how I can help. And I'm going to take the initiative, because as much as we plan and as much as we create systems, we also need to be learning by watching what's happening in the moment, because we can't plan for everything. And that the thing that allows you to be able to handle the unknowable with grace is knowing ahead of time how you're going to respond to it. your mindset, your disposition, having an others outward focus, and a mind that says, I know my role, my first, primary and my tertiary role, how it interacts with everything else. I know all those technical things, but I also know that I am open to helping in any way I can. So that you can hold those two things in tension. And the best teams are the ones who really practice that good teamwork by being flexible, by helping, by being peripherally aware. Like if you were at the register and you see the team is struggling, you might have the mind to say, hey, how are y'all doing? And just really quickly check in with them. And it's not a ding against you to say, I'll be right with you. And then go over and chat really quick and then go back. They might say, hey, can you slow the line down a little bit? Or can you help me by prepping some syrups or sauces into the cups while taking the order? And then that buys us some time because if something happened, like we didn't put the screw into the screen the right way, I don't know what it is. Because don't forget, we're having that opening shift. They're calibrating the machine. They're not changing temperatures or anything. We didn't allow them to do that, but they're dialing in. Yeah, and at the end of the shift, they're also cleaning, like actually literally cleaning everything, like a closing shift. And so stuff can fall out of alignment pretty quickly. And they might have run out of a key ingredient to a signature beverage and they didn't plan accordingly. So you can't keep selling something if you don't have something. So are we communicating when that stuff happens? And we had that happen many times. And yeah, you could have planned better. So that's like on the score sheet. But also, you could have not said anything, but you did. And that was positive. So we're trying to catch all that. But again, that's about being flexible, and communicative is another thing. Just be a team player for the common goal of creating a wonderful coffee experience for the people on the other side of the counter by creating a great experience for each other while doing that service. That's what we saw a lot of, either done well or not done well. But that is a few things I wanted to just mention here on the show regarding America's Best Coffee House. We had many really cool coffee shops come through. I mentioned Palace, Heart Coffee, Cafe Grumpy, and the like. There was so many to mention. And I've got a bunch of old score sheets from back in the day that I still hang on to. I'm a sentimental guy. Somewhere on YouTube, there's like I'll put the link to this. Our videographer at the time, Danny, he had put up a YouTube video that kind of was a montage of our competition. And it's some of the only stuff that exists today about America's Best Coffee House. But these are some lessons that I learned from it. And I know that if you apply that same level of scrutiny to your coffee shop, the way a set of judges like myself and my other co-judges did for these coffee shops, then you will also be able to give feedback to one another and work better and better and better. That's one of the things about competitions that is the most beneficial. It is, we are collectively entering into an agreement to be judged, wherein usually we feel, yeah, technically I'm open to feedback, but I don't know if it's as enthusiastic. So maybe the lesson that competitions can really teach us is that we don't need to spend lots of money, travel and apply and do all that. We don't need a stage to give each other permission to help each other get better. If we can just say, no, I want to open myself up to the feedback of my peers and my manager, my trainer, and all that other stuff, and my customers in the coffee shop, all for the purpose of being the best coffee shop you can be right now. Whether you're awarded or not awarded, my opinion, doesn't really matter. As long as you're progressing and you are the best as you can be and doing what it needs to be done to steward that responsibility, that trust that people put in you, to constantly be looking at maintaining excellence, gaining excellence where necessary, and take those competition lessons, apply it to your coffee shop. And, there's a lot of great coffee shops out there. And I think some of these things are the way that you get to be a great coffee shop. So, with that said, thanks again, everybody, for a great 9 years of Keys to the Shop here in 2026. Started in 2017. So, what a great episode to sort of put out there for this momentous day. And with that, I will say, go and keep doing great work. Make this a great year for you and your team. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.